All right, so we're going to do some of our notes here today.
Wait, what was the answer for?
We'll be doing that lab next week. It's related to food webs and food chains. So we'll start today with some basics of ecology. So first of all, what the word ology, like biology, zoology, means the study of, Emily, and the study of. So biology is the study of what? Bio.
Biography.
What, Lindsay? Living things, yeah. Bio means living, okay? Geology is a study of the earth, okay? So any ology is a study of something. Ecology is a science in which you study living things and their interactions with the non-living things around them. That's what makes ecology. Ecology is where I spent my undergraduate and graduate, first part of my graduate studies in ecology. That's what my major was, basically. Took classes about all of the living parts of ecosystems and the non-living parts. I had to take a class about plants, a class about trees and birds and fish. And also, though, about wetlands, classes about chemistry, classes about soil science. So I had to study not just the living parts of the earth, but also the non-living parts so that I could study how they interact. When I was in graduate school, after I went on further, I was using computers to try to make models of how ecosystems worked. Writing computer code to model what would happen in an ecosystem. And that's an area that there's a lot of research and there's a lot of opportunity. So, as you guys said in our question today, ecosystem. It is an area in which you have living things interacting with their surroundings. They affect each other. Living organisms affect the non-living parts of their ecosystem. Now, some ecosystems are very, very large. If you imagine like an ocean ecosystem, a desert ecosystem, that's very large. But an ecosystem can also be relatively small. Like a puddle is its own ecosystem. A rotting log is actually a tiny little ecosystem. So they can vary in size. As an example, today we're going to refer to the courtyard as an ecosystem that we can talk about. That's an ecosystem out there. It's not very large, but it has living things, has non-living things, they interact with each other. So when we're talking about an ecosystem, we can refer to the community. And when we refer to the community in an area, we're referring to just the living organisms in that ecosystem. Now, if you thought of like your neighborhood that you live in as an ecosystem, all the people that live there and the animals, the pets, and so forth, they would be like the community, the residents of your neighborhood. So give me some idea, in our courtyard ecosystem, what are some things that are part of the community out there? Alexandra?
Trees.
The trees out there? Emily?
Grass.
The grass? Yeah? Yeah, the shrub out there? The dandelions?
The air.
Not really the community though. That would be part of the next section, the habitat. Habitat's sort of the area, the non-living parts, the location. If you're thinking about, again, your neighborhood, like the buildings in your neighborhood, the houses, they would be like the habitat, the area where people actually live. So parts of the habitat, like Emily just said, the air, the soil, the rocks out there, those are part of the habitat.
Grass.
And when we we study an ecosystem, we often want to study just a single part of it. And we might study individual populations. Population is one specific species, all the organisms of a single species in an ecosystem. Can anybody tell me one population you would find in the courtyard? Jordan? Okay. No? No?
Oh, grass. Tree.
No?
Wait.
A population out there,
Oh. Grass.
right?
Rabbits.
What?
Squirrels.
Not quite.
There's a bird over there.
Yeah? Dandelions, yes. So why are we saying no to some of what you're saying, but yes to dandelions, yes to ants? Not quite. Okay, Kaya? Yes. Yeah, so exactly. Kaya's exactly right. So you can't say birds, but give me something related that we could say. Robins. That's one species of bird. But there's lots of types of birds. Okay? Out there. There could be a blue jay. There could be a pileated woodpecker. Okay? There could be lots of different birds. What can we say instead of trees? Give me one population of trees. Mia?
Oak.
Not quite.
Birch.
Because there's lots of types of oaks. Lots of types of birch. Lots of types of pines. That is Pinus strobus.
Yellow.
That's a white pine. That's Betula papyrifera. That's Thuya occidentalis, the cedar bush over there. Yes. So all of those things I was just mentioning are specific species. Just like a dandelion or a robin is a specific species. So if you're ever asked to list a population, you have to be specific. You can't say birds or fish or trees. You have to list a specific type of bird or fish or tree. If I say all the bullfrogs in the pond, yes, that's a species. If I say all the frogs in the pond, no, that's not. Because there's lots of types of frogs, species of frogs. And then, finally, we often will refer to the diversity of an ecosystem. Now, you guys know what this word means. Like, what does it mean in just English? Like, if we say, I went to a school that was very diverse. Like, what does diverse mean in that context? Yeah? Yeah, many different kinds of people. Maybe people from many different nationalities or races or religion, so forth. That would be a diverse community. So what do you think it means in an ecosystem? We're not talking about people now. What would diversity mean in terms of an ecosystem? Okay? Yeah, it's how many different types of living things there. Now, our courtyard, do you think that's a very diverse ecosystem?
Yeah. No.
Not really. It's pretty it's enclosed, it's small. There's some diversity because there's those different types of trees and dandelions and a few animals and stuff. Which has a greater diversity? The courtyard ecosystem or the woods out near where we go for research? Yeah, would you find some of these same species in the woods?
Yes.
But you'd also find others. Like what? What might you find in the woods that you wouldn't find in the courtyard?
Deer.
Deer?
Rabbit.
Maybe rabbits?
Rotten logs.
No, there's some rotten logs out there. Maybe snakes? A skunk. This morning when I was running before school, I was running up Valentine Bray, a road near my neighborhood, and then a skunk crossed right in front of me as I was running. And then I ran by and then it turned around, and then it turned around again and put its tail up like it was going to spray me, but it didn't. So I was safe. I have to call in sick if I got sprayed by a skunk. That would be weird. All right. So when we are talking about an ecosystem, we can talk about the biotic factors in that ecosystem or the abiotic. What did you guys tell me? Biology is the study of what? Bio means life, living. What do you think then a biotic factor would be?
Living factor.
A living thing. So in the courtyard, the dandelions, the bushes, the ants, the mushrooms, Those are all biotic factors because they're all living parts of the ecosystem.
How do they get there? Do they crawl over the floor?
What? Well, they've been there for a long time. We get ducks in there every few years.
How?
They fly in there. We had ducks and they came in, laid eggs. The eggs hatched, there were little ducklings in there.
How does squirrels
And-
get in there and rabbits?
Don't you have like a
They parkour on the tree and they
What?
jump on the building.
You have
The
a
hogs
black
could
sheep.
like pick up the animals that are dropping them.
like a yes,
What did you say?
like a black little duck chick?
Out there?
No,
An ugly
in the
duckling?
house.
All right. There are also abiotic factors in the ecosystem. What are those?
Not mine.
Yeah, non-living. When you put the letter A in front of a word, it usually means not. So not living.
Friend.
So what are some abiotic factors if you imagine this picture of an ecosystem? What would be not an abiotic factor you could imagine there? A dead animal?
The log.
The rotting log? What else?
Rocks.
The rocks in there? The water? It could also be not just like physical objects, it could be like properties, like the temperature of the water, the pH of the water, the amount of oxygen in the air, the amount of carbon dioxide in the air. Those would be other examples of abiotic factors. They're all non-living things, but they're really important. Because if the oxygen level in this water is too low, certain species can't live there. If the water is cold, certain species will live there, others will not. So these abiotic factors influence and affect the biotic factors. Okay, we'll finish up today with a couple slides about energy. So where do we get our energy?
Get there.
The foods that we eat. So we get energy from the foods that we eat. All living things need energy. It's one of the requirements of life. If an organism doesn't have energy, it can't survive. There are some organisms, however, that don't need to eat things.
Oh, leaves,
Well, close.
plants,
Plants. How come they don't need to eat anything? They still need energy. Natalia?
Energies from the sun.
They get energy from the sun. We've learned about this earlier in the year.
And the
They
stuff
use
makes
energy to
sugar.
learn from the sun, and they capture it. What do we call plants? What's the other term for them?
Something, something.
Photosynthesis.
They go through photosynthesis.
Wait, does it start with that?
Your photos.
We call them producers, and there's another word for them.
Consumers.
It's a little more scientific sounding word.
Wait, tell me what the first letter is.
It means self-feeding.
Oh, decomposers.
No. Autotrophs.
Are you kidding? I knew that.
Autotrophs is another word for producers. They use the sun's energy to make food. And what process did you say just a minute ago, Emily? Photosynthesis. So remind me. Photosynthesis, producers take in what gas? Think about it first. Before you just start shouting out words, raise your hand. Photosynthesis takes in what gas?
Carbon dioxide.
It also needs another substance. Nope.
The sun.
Does it start with an N?
Nope. Lindsay? Needs carbon dioxide.
Water?
Please?
Oxygen?
Nope. Nope. It takes in. It needs the sun, but it needs something else.
It takes in water.
Miranda, water. Carbon dioxide and water and the sun, it produces two things. What does photosynthesis produce?
Sugar.
Raise your hand. Okay? Yes, and a waste product,
I know it.
right?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. That's what organelle does it happen in? What organelle within a plant cell?
Nine.
Did it start with an M?
Nope.
Wait, what? Ask the question again?
Chloroplast. Happens in the chloroplast. All right, that was a little review. All right, so plants, autotrophs, producers, they all mean the same thing. They can use the sun's energy. They take the sun's energy, capture it, store it in glucose. That's their energy. Consumers has everything else. Consumers get their energy by eating other organisms. You get your energy by eating other living things.
No. Yes.
What's another word for a consumer?
Meat
They're not autotrophs. They're heterotrophs. We are all consumers.
So I'm a heterotroph.
Yeah. We're all heterotrophs.
I consume.
And finally, we have another group of organisms we call decomposers. What do decomposers do in an ecosystem? What's their function, yeah?
They like break things down.
Yeah, they break down dead organisms, waste products, organic matter,
Like mushrooms.
and they include fungi mostly, bacteria. So you know, if like a squirrel got hit by a car on the side of the road and is just laying there dead, well after, you know, a few days there's not much of it left. After a couple weeks, nothing's left. Well, what happened to it?
It died.
Well, then what?
Animals eat it.
Decomposed.
Into the earth.
Some animals ate it probably. Bacteria started growing on it, broke down all of its tissue. Fungi started growing on it. So yeah, they break down. And what happens is they return the nutrients back into the soil, into the ecosystem.
Wait, go back. Hang on. Oh, okay.
And that's just like that.
Who was that?
I think I gave it. All right.
I just need to ask credit. Wait, do we have to write anything?
So we often will use a diagram called the food chain to help us understand what's going on in an ecosystem. The food chain shows us how energy gets transferred from one species to another to another. And so a food chain shows us the predators and shows their prey. So here I have a food chain with 4 organisms in it. We use arrows to show how energy is being transferred. Which of these boxes, even before I put names in these boxes, you can probably tell me which is a plant or a producer. Which of these is a producer?
The last one.
This one?
Yeah.
No.
The first one. The 2
Why the first one?
The middle one.
Yes, because it gets energy from the sun. It has no arrows pointing towards it because it doesn't eat anything. It's a producer. Let's put wheat in there, and then a mouse, snake, and then wheat.
Bird.
So that's a food chain. It shows us what eats what. The wheat is eaten by a mouse. The mouse gets eaten by the snake gets eaten by the eel. That's a food chain. It just shows us one thing which eats another, it eats another. When we have a food chain like this, we often will label it. We label the producers and then the consumers. And the consumers, we can even label them with what level consumer they are. We call the mouse the first thing that eats the producer. That's called a first level
The
consumer.
carnivore.
Then the snake would be what?
The carnivore.
It's a carnivore, but what level consumer is it in this case?
2.
Second level consumer. And the eagle's a third level consumer. What about in this diagram, which is a little different? In this food chain, raise your hand if you can tell me what level consumer is the snake. Raise your hand. Lindsay? It's a third level consumer. What's this grass? What would we call it, Avery? A producer. What is the mouse? Jordan? What level consumer? Second level, yes. So that's how a food chain works. It shows us what eats what. All right, one last slide for today. We have some terms, and I think you guys probably already know all of these terms, what they mean.
AKA.
Raise your hand if you can tell me, what's an herbivore? What is an herbivore? What is that word? Raise your hand, please.
Oh, I'm.
What's that mean? Alexander? It's an organism that only eats plants. I am an herbivore.
You're an animal that only eats plants.
When's
Correct.
the last time you've eaten? How long? have you-
January 1st, 1993.
No. No way. Are you serious?
Yeah, that's when I became a vegetarian. It was a New Year's resolution.
Are you kidding me?
When
do you think you're gonna eat?
So how many years?
Will you ever?
24 years.
Was eat like
you
cold
miss
cuts?
it when they see like a
No. All right. So an herbivore is always a first level consumer. Always a first level consumer. Carnivores, what does that word mean? Raise your hand if you can tell me what a carnivore is. Raise your hand. I picked you several times already. Jordan, they only eat meat. They might be a second level consumer, they might be a third level consumer, or even a fourth. Right. Something that eats both plants and animals is called an omnivore. You guys are all omnivores.
What if we don't eat vegetables? No.
I don't eat
You do.
vegetables.
Well, I don't like all of them.
What you eat?
I usually like,
Mia eats like lettuce.
Bread is a vegetable.
no. I eat
Bread is not a vegetable.
It's made of meat.
That's not
A plant.
a vegetable.
That's carbs.
All right, predator or prey. Predators are things that hunt and eat other organisms. Prey are the things that get hunted and eaten and killed and consumed.
Jordan's the plane.
Oh my god.
I can't see.
And then we just went over these two words. What do they mean? Heterotroph. How about somebody I haven't heard much from today? Anyone?
He's heard from me today, so.
Avery?
They obtain energy by eating other organisms.
They obtain energy by eating other things. They cannot make their own food. They have to eat other organisms in order to survive, to get energy. And finally, an autotroph.
Please, Mr. Durant. It can make its own food.
Aaron? It's an organism that can make its own food. In what process?
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis.
Can I watch the song?
Is there already know this stuff? Yeah, you literally taught us. Remember the close
Yeah, we did photosynthesis.
We have time to watch the song.
No, we don't.
Watch the song.
You guys don't like the song? The song was awesome.